All right, so listen up, student. Open up your beer book to page 267. Today, we're discussing Dunkels.
For an open window on a crafty world, Max and Chris from Ups and Brew. Ups and Brew. Welcome to Ups and Brew.
Before we go on with this episode, a special word for our sponsor, Brew HQ, which is your one-stop shop for anything that is homebrew supplies. Now, in these weird times, a lot of people are getting into new hobbies like making bread, stitching, or doing other stuff like drinking. Well, you can put pretty much everything except for the stitching into one thing, which is brewing beer. Brewing beer is pretty awesome. I like it, clearly. I'm into this. But it is one of those things that a lot of people go like, oh no, that's for other people. No, it's not necessarily for other people. There's a lot of different ways that you can get into it. And there's a lot of creative outlets that you can kind of look into. I mean, a beer is sometimes very indicating of your personality, and you can kind of, be artful in what you're doing while still, creating something pretty awesome that you can then later on consume at a very cheaper price than actually going out and buying it. So there is a code. If you type in bros at checkout, you get a 10% discount at Brew HQ. Now, something that's really cool that happened recently is a friend of mine has started home brewing. He's been contacting me a lot, asking me a lot of questions, and I used Brew HQ to kind of answer some of his questions. He was wondering if he could order, this type of hops that were out of this with this other company and this and that, and Brew HQ was able to help out. I was able to go in and go, hey, actually the hop you're looking for is right here. This is a substitute. You can order it. It's going to get to you, which I think is something really awesome, especially in these times or in any time really getting into home brewing. It's pretty fun. It's pretty awesome. Brew HQ, go check it out. Everything you need is in the down there. So this week we are taking a look at the Dunkel. It's kind of funny. Chris brought it up to me a few days ago. He's like, hey, we should do Dunkel. I'm like, we haven't already? It's one of those classic styles. When it comes to, I think, beer in general, there's 3 European countries that you kind of look at, and then you can kind of see, okay, so they were going this way, this one was going that way, this one was going this way, and that's why we have all these phenomenal beers today. Germany stayed very, very pure to their beer. That's why if you have a lager today from Germany, it's actually really close to a lager you would have had, back in the day. They really kept everything pure, especially because of that purity law, the Reinheitsgebot, saying that you can only use 4 ingredients in beer, which is water, malts, hops, and yeast. Those are the only 4 ingredients. You can't use anything else. The Dunkel, which is what we're going to be looking at today, is A, Reinheitsgebot compliant, B, it's a dark lager. So you're still using that lager yeast, but then you're going into more of a stout kind of mix. Not exactly a stout, not a stout at all, but in the sense that you're using, darker grains. You're trying, Dunkel means dark, so you're going into the dark spectrum of a beer, but you'll see it does have that clean German twist to it. Chris, what exactly is a Dunkel? What is this beer? Why is this important? Why is this the subject of this week's video? And then we'll get into the recipe and brewing and all that stuff.
So to better understand Dunkels, we have to dive back in history, most precisely into the region of Germany. The fantastic beer heaven that Germany is, Dunkels mostly originated in the southern part of Germany. Southern part of Germany around Munich is where most of this stuff around Dunkels happen. For those of you guys that don't know, Dunkels is mostly a term used in Germany to describe something as dark. So having Dunkels being the darker version of lagers was bound to happen. Dunkel has a very large family tree if you look at it, because inside of it you can find different bucks in there. If you look at Dunkels in the history of time and how they evolved the style through the years, it got very popular in Europe after. Mostly in France, where it was paired with fantastic foods, people were using Dunkels as a nice, easy drinking, darker beer. And it is not to compare with Vienna lagers or Martins, which are mostly more towards the reddish amber tints. We're really talking about a darker, browner version of it. So Dunkels need to be dry, easy drinking, crispy, but also you need to get some roastiness, a little bit of coffee and chocolate, but not too much. It needs to stay in that light, easy drinking mindset. Through the years, it kind of like just kept on going and it got attached to different cultures around the world. Modelo, which is a beer brewed in Mexico, yes, Negra Modelo, is the dark version. It's a dark lager. Is it really a Dunkel? It's still debatable, but it's one of the only mass-produced style of dark lagers. Obviously, there's plenty of other choice around there, but it really took off over Americas, over in the Asian part of the world. But Dunkels, in general, kind of like got let down in popularity over the last 10 years. And with the boom of craft beers, our own brewers, a lot of people were bringing old styles back. But lately, with the recent years, the recent developments, and the actual boom in AZ New England IPAs, we kind of like lost track of those styles lately. Yes, there's plenty of easy, crushable, drinkable IPAs out there, but having those darker beers that were meant historically to be easy drinking and also kind of like against the stigma of big, heavy, darker beers, it's still something that we need to promote and kind of like share along. And doing a video like that explaining the style is one of the main goals around it. Dunkels are an easy drinking dark beer. If you don't want to drink a dark beer because it's too heavy, then keep an eye out for Dunkels. They are made for that, and they've been made for that for over hundreds and hundreds of years. So, Max, if you want to brew a Dunkel at home, or you just wonder how does it work in general when brewing a Dunkel, how does it work to get this fantastic dark lager into your glass?
So as I've stated before, Dunkel, meaning dark, is a dark lager, which is not to be confused with the Schwarzbier. Schwarzbier is a little more on the roasty side, is still a German style, but the Dunkel is really just taking the word dark lager into effect at this point. Can range anywhere from being more of an amber color to a darker kind of black opaque color, but the flavor is very interesting in this. When you look at English styles of beer, when you look at stouts and porters, you're looking towards a very sweet beer that has sometimes a lot of chocolate, a lot of coffee notes, some roast that's going to be there. With a Dunkel, you don't have that, which is kind of weird. It seems like if you have a dark beer, you're going to have very bold flavors, but not with this particular style. With the Dunkel, you're not trying to go over sweet or over roasty. You're still trying to have a very balanced beer like a German lager, but you're looking for that color and maybe a little more coffee, a little more chocolate, a little more caramel, but not overly. Again, keyword is balance. And there's a few ways to kind of attempt this, to get this. So Munich Malt, which is a German type of malt, is a little more on the amber side. A lot of these beers are going to be almost 100% Munich, as some of them are going to be a high percentage Munich, which with some high percentage Pilsner, and then you're going to add some caramel malt to it to add the color, add the flavor to it a little bit. But again, it's not an overly complicated grain bill. You're still mostly using Munich, mostly using Pilsner, and then the rest of it is just for an accent. And we're going to come into one of my favorite ingredients, not really favorite, but one of those ingredients that's very special, very different. Not a lot of breweries in North America use it, mostly because you don't really need to in North America or in England or in Belgium, because you're not having to be compliant to the Reinheitsgebot, to the purity law, which is Cinnabar. Cinnabar is a extract that is 100% malt based. Therefore, you can use it in Germany. And the kind of cool thing about Cinnabar is that it's a color additive. You use it to add that dark color to your beer without affecting the flavors too much. By too much, I mean it almost doesn't affect the flavor. You might have a little more roast, a little more of that sweetness to it, that caramel flavor to it, that burnt caramel, but not much. Very, very much, like it's almost non-existent. It's there to add the color. So that's how they get those Dunkels to be balanced, fresh, a very lager type beers, but still have that darker color by adding this Cinnamar. Look it up. It is a very cool ingredient. I wish that more North American brewers would use it, and maybe some do. But there's other options out there that are not necessarily Reinheitsgebot or purity law compliant that can be used. So it's kind of a like, well, they use that because they have to, but it's still a very cool tool in your tool belt when you are a brewer. I've talked about lactose in the same way in the past. Lactose, not necessarily my favorite ingredient to use, but it is an interesting tool to have in your tool belt when you're a brewer. If you need something to be a little more sweet and non-fermentable, this is perfect. Lactose is going to be perfect. And if you want your beer to be a little darker but not have overly roasty flavors to it, you don't want to use a lot of caramel malt, you don't want to use a lot of crystal malt, well, Cinnamar might be the option for you. So Dunkel, one of my favorite German beers. I'm still more a fan of Pilsners and Helles, but the Dunkel is really interesting, and it is a style that is from, the motherland of beer making, so you have to respect it, and I'm surprised that not more North American brewers are brewing these types of beer, but I'm sure we're going to see more and more of this. This beer also uses your traditional German hops, and you have to look at it kind of historically, where brewers and breweries in general would use what they had locally. So that's why it's all German hops, and it's a lot of stuff that you would find in Pilsners and lagers and other German type beers. So there's not a lot of difference to that. The big difference, as mentioned earlier, is the malt profile that is a little off than your regular lagers, but it's still pretty much there. So there you have it, the Dunkel beer. I hope this cleared it up. Clear beer. It's a dark beer. Anyways, bad jokes. If you like the video, please leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you guys on the next one.